After October 7th, with the horrific surge in anti-Semitism, I had conversation with several Holocaust survivors who've been marching alongside with us for years. Nate, aged 94 from Canada, expressed how devastated he felt by the brutality of the pogrom. Gabriela from Los Angeles shared fear of wearing her Star of David necklace, and Mala, for the first time in her life, hesitated to speak out publicly against anti-Semitism, stating, "My children are afraid. They know where we live." It's crucial to remember that this conversation occurred in 2023, not 1933. For years, Israel have been experiencing delegitimization and demonization mainly on campuses. Administrations, for the most part, remain inactive. Let's recall 5 words this year that describe it all. It depends on the context, said Penn University President Liz McGill at the Education Committee congressional hearing. Calling for the genocide of the Jews depend on the context. Our next speaker is Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman, president of Yeshiva University in New York, who is at the forefront of this battle, leading the fight against the explosion of anti-Semitism on US campuses. Dr. Berman, please.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you to the leadership of the March of the Living who have brought us here on this very important and impactful moment in Jewish history. My dear friends, our honored survivors of October 7th and survivors of the Shoah, our heroes. I wanted to bring into this evening the story of a survivor who's very close to me, my wife's grandmother, our Bubby, who was born in Buchech in now current Ukraine. She was born Sila Anderman, raised in a very successful family, a happy childhood with her brother Pinchas, and her childhood sweetheart, who she eventually married, Shlomo Fenster. They had a great life, those three, Pinchas, Shlomo, and Bubby, loved to be with each other, to celebrate life together. And then the Nazis entered their town. They killed their whole family. Bubby and Shlomo ran into the woods, and she survived with her husband, one of the few that I know together, husband and wife, that survived in the woods, hiding in the caves, hiding in the cemeteries, all throughout the war. She relied on the good graces of some that she found, others who were not so kind to her. And eventually, she made her way to Romania after the war, moved to Cuba, started her life over again, and then when Castro rose to power, had to flee once again and start her life over in New York. There she had her daughter, Adela, who had my wife, Anita, and they raised their family in New York. Fast forward the story to the 1980s. Bubby receives a phone call from a friend who just visited the Soviet Union. Sila, she says, you need to sit down. You're not going to believe this. Your brother Pinchas, he's alive. You ran one way, he ran the other way. You each thought each other was dead, but I just visited the Soviet Union and Pinchas is there and he's alive. Bubby immediately arranged to call Pinchas. They spoke to one another, but Pinchas unfortunately passed away soon after, and they never had a chance to meet. Pinchas, though, had a daughter named Gala who married Vladimir, who when they had a son, they named him Pinchas after her deceased father. And when the Iron Curtain fell, they moved to Israel. My wife and I spent a couple of years studying in Israel in Yeshiva University's campus in Jerusalem. And there we were blessed with our first son, who we named Shlomo after my wife's grandfather. And we invited our bubby to attend. She was only about 88 years old at the time. She flew to Israel and came to the bris. And there she was holding baby Shlomo, named after her husband, when all of a sudden, a woman walked in with a very strong family resemblance. A woman she never met previously. It was her niece, Gala. And Gala brought with her a little boy named Pinchas. And Pinchas ran over to see the new baby. And I looked out and saw once again Bubby surrounded by Shlomo and Pinchas. The Nazis thought that they can kill them. They thought that they can kill Shlomo and Pinchas. But we learn in the prophet Ezekiel that the dry bones will come back to life. They will always come back to life. And Shlomo and Pinchas, once thought to be dead, were reunited together with Bubby in Jerusalem in the state of Israel. I think about the story in the context of today. The war in Israel, anti-Semitism around the world, particularly on college campuses, lots of challenges and turmoil. My Bubby could not have survived without the good people helping her along the way. She was forever thankful to those that did and never forgot those that turned away. So what does it mean today to be helpful? And as the focus here is on college campuses, let me focus specifically on college campuses. Elie Wiesel once described the whole 20th century, specifically the Shoah, as the perils of indifference, of bystanders who are indifferent. Indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning, it is an end. But I would suggest to you that the problem of today on universities' campuses is not the issue of indifference. The university leadership, they're not indifferent. They care a lot. They care a lot about protecting their students. Not just the protesters, but also their Jewish students. But it's not the perils of indifference, but the perils of indulgence. There are universities whose leadership indulges their students to break rules of the school without consequences. Leadership that choose to indulge one group of students at the expense of another group who are being intimidated and threatened. And worst of all, they indulge lies without speaking the truth. I can tell you, with speaking to presidents from across this country, that university leadership knows the truth, which is that the politics of Israelis and Palestinians are complicated. But one thing is clear: Hamas is a terrorist organization. Their charter is to eliminate the Jewish state and kill all of its Jewish citizens. They have promised to repeat over and over again the rape, the murder, the beheading, and the burning alive of families. They do not stand for the two-state solution, but the final solution. And sadly, we see university leaderships who indulge their students by not speaking out this truth. The universities should not be places simply to host conversations. They need to be places of education. And when it comes to Israel's war against Hamas today, there should certainly be free speech, but not free speech where there is intimidation. Not free speech where you don't have an environment of sophisticated conversation that's based on facts, analysis, and critical thinking. And finally, there needs to be free speech that comes with moral clarity. Extremists obscure language. They seek to muddle, not clarify. They use terms that dog whistle to their followers with a veneer of defensibility to appear respectable. By now, does anyone really not understand the phrase, from the river to the sea? Or what does it mean when they say globalize the intifada? The way to reclaim complexity and the middle ground is by framing the conversation with moral clarity and informing it with facts. We need education, not equivocation. We need the good people to stand up for what is right and to educate the next generation, not only with purpose and complexity, but also with moral clarity. And I am pleased to stand here to let you know that there are those good people in this country. After October 7th, speaking to presidents around the country, we signed on over 100 university presidents, major public and private faith-based universities, historically black college universities, that stood with moral clarity and said that we stand with Israel against Hamas and that we stand against terrorism. And I am happy to say, being here tonight, I am part of a delegation of dear friends, university presidents, colleagues, who come to Yom HaShoah on this commemoration day to say, never again. So let me close with how I started with my Bubby story. I'm happy to say that our Bubby lived until 107 years old. She lived not only to see her grandchildren, but her great-grandchildren. And had special pride when 3 of her great-grandchildren who moved to Israel donned the uniform of the Israel Defense Forces and served to protect the only Jewish state. In the name of my Bubby and all of the Bubbies who preceded her throughout the generations, in the name of my Zaidi and all of the Zaidis of our past, in the name of all of our survivors, in the name of Shlomo and Pinchas and all of the children, those that perished, those that live, and those that are yet to be born, we will never lose faith. We will never lose sight that Am Yisrael Chai is not simply a statement of fact, but an act of defiance. That we were blessed with an eternal mission to perpetuate our holy heritage and sanctify God's name by bringing kindness and goodness into the world. And we are committed to finding the partners and building a better world together. Am Yisrael Chai, now and forever.